وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم القيامة. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله تعالى وسنة رسوله وابتغاء مرضاته سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم إنا نسألك فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. أما بعد، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We say Alhamdulillah, we thank, praise, venerate and glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all His continuous favors that He has bestowed upon us. And we send salutations upon the beloved of Allah, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower His blessings and His mercy upon His family and His companions and all those that follow Him until the day of Qiyamah and all those that are present. Alhamdulillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us, or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us together once again so that we can learn about the virtues of this month that will be visiting us in a few weeks. And before we start off or continue where we stopped, there was a question that was asked, and the question was that we always hear the ayah Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyamu kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. But the question was that what is the origin of fasting? Alright? So fasting, as it says in the ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, oh, you believe, we have prescribed and we have declared fasting for you just like we have declared for those before you. Kama kutiba alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. And so we understand that fasting isn't just something that was given to us. It's something that was given to those ummahs before us, from them even to the Prophet. Some of the scholars mention pertaining to this ayah that was given to some of the Prophets. That's why Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions that the most beloved type of fasting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the fasting of Sayyidina Dawood, which is Sayyidina Dawood used to fast one day and not fast the next, and fast the next day and not fast the next, which is known as the most beloved fasting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are mentions of from those nations before us that used to fast. Some of them used to fast for one full day, right? So like we said, that the reason for the fasting is the important thing, right? It was prescribed for those before us, but the main reason is why لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you can become conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that you can have taqwa in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last time we were speaking, last week when we were speaking, we spoke about Ramadan, and we spoke about some of the virtues of Ramadan. And from what we mentioned was about what happens on the first night of Ramadan, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gazes upon His slaves, and whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gazes upon that night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him. And many of us do not understand the greatness of this gaze that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. There is a story of a man, a very pious man, who goes by the name of Hatim al-Asam. He was known as the Luqman of his time, but the story that I'm going to tell you, we are not taking lesson from Hatim al-Asam. The lesson we take from this story is from his daughter, from his young daughter. In one of the years, Hatim al-Asam had this yearning and he had this desire to go on Hajj. But he didn't have the money, he didn't have the provision. But he had this deep flame in his heart, right? The strong desire to go on Hajj. And when the time for Hajj came, this yearning increased. And every night, he used to cry, he used to weep. And one night when he was crying, his daughter came in. This young girl. And this young girl isn't just any ordinary girl. This young girl, which is more pious than any elder that we have in our time. This young girl that is more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more conscious than any elder that we have in our time. This young girl who had more trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than any elder we have in our time. She comes to her father and she asks him, "Oh my father, why are you weeping? Why are you crying?" And he replies and he says that the time of Hajj is coming close. So she says, "Oh my father, why don't you go on Hajj? Just go. The time of Hajj, so you go on Hajj." And she replies and she says, and Hatim al-Asam replies, he says, "An-nafaq." He says, "I don't have the money. I don't have the provisions. Not just for me, I don't have the provisions to go on Hajj." Right? Also, but she understood that he just meant that. So she asked him, or she told him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who sustains. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Razaq, He is the sustainer. So put your trust in Him and go on Hajj. But Hatim al-Asam explains to her that it's not just my provisions that are needed. What is needed is the provisions for you, your siblings, your mother. And then at the end he says that it's up to your mother if I can go or not. Why? Because he understood that if he leaves, the mother is the one that has to take care of everybody. She has to feed everybody. Right? So this young girl, she goes to the mother and the brothers and the sisters. And she tells them that our father wants to go on Hajj. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sustainer and He will take care of us. So our father go on Hajj. And she speaks to them and they finally agree. And they say, "Okay, you can go on Hajj." Right? So when it's time for him to leave, he decides to leave and he goes. Before he leaves enough provision for them for 3 days. Even though he is going and he's going to be gone for months, all that he could leave for them was provision for 3 days. And he had nothing with him. No food, nothing. So he leaves that for 3 days, the food, the drinks. And he leaves and he goes and he starts walking behind the caravan. Why does he walk behind the caravan? Because he can't afford to be with those in the caravan. So he walks behind the caravan. And while they were on the path, while they were traveling, the head of this caravan, the Amir of this caravan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that this man gets bitten by a scorpion. And after he was bitten by the scorpion, he has this severe pain and he thought he was going to die. And then one of those that were in the caravan, they mentioned that Hatim al-Asam, the pious man, he's been walking behind us. Let us ask him for help. And so the Amir said, "Go ask him." And so they all went and they went to go ask him. And he agreed. He went to help. And Hatim al-Asam, this pious man, this man whose heart was filled with nur. And we understand that if your heart is filled with nur, the nur travels to all of your body parts. To your hands, to your feet, to your tongue. So Hatim al-Asam came and he read Surah Fatiha with adab, with respect, following the sunnahs. And he read Surah Fatiha and this man woke up the next day and he was fine. As if nothing happened to him. And this man comes to Hatim al-Asam and he says that your provision for your travel to Hajj and your return from the Hajj is on me. I'll take care of everything. And Hatim al-Asam, he gets excited. He says, "Oh Allah, this was your plan for me. Now, oh Allah, show me the plan that you have for my family." Right? Show me the plan, because he left with nothing. Now because of how he helped that man, he finds that everything that he has is taken care of. So now we go back to the family after he made this dua. Right? So now we go back to the house of Hatim al-Asam after he left. The first day passed, the second day passed, the third day passed, and they ran out of everything that he left. And at this point, they started blaming the young girl, the young daughter, saying that it was her fault because it was her idea to let her father go on the Hajj. So they started blaming her. And what did she do? She laughed. She smiled. She was still happy. She wasn't fazed by how they were blaming her. And then she asked them, Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is our father Ar-Razzaq? Or is he Akilur Rizq? The small young girl, right? But with the wisdom that she was given, she asked her mother and her siblings, is our father the sustainer Or is he just but one of those who eats from the sustenance? And the family replied, he is but one of those who eat from the sustenance. He is not the sustainer. And so this young daughter, she replies, فَذَهَبَ آكِلُ الرِّزْقِ وَبَقِيَ الرَّزَّاقِ. She says that, so one of those who eat the sustenance has left, but the sustainer is still with us, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still with us. And at this point, they hear a knock on the door. Right? At this point, because the mother asked her and said, why are you laughing? We are weak. We are hungry and we are weak out of hunger. But at this point, they hear a knock on the door. And they ask, who's at the door? And the person replies and he says that he replies and he says that the Amir of that time seeks some water. The Amir of that time seeks some water, because at that time the Amir, he went out and he went on a hunting trip and he ran out of water. So he sent one of those that were with him, he sent him to go and find him some water. And where they find themselves? At the house of Hatim al-Asam. And when the mother heard this, she was surprised. She said, Subhanallah, we are in pain and we are weak because we are so hungry. And the Amir comes and is asking us for water. Who is more in need? But because of the adab that they had, she goes and she gets a jug or she gets a vessel and she fills it with clean, sweet water. And she gives it and they take it to the Amir. And once the Amir drinks from this water and he becomes full from this water and he enjoys the sweetness of this water, and we need to understand that the food and the drink by itself cannot fill you. The food and the drink by itself cannot taste nice. But it's the permission that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that food and that drink to fill you. Right? Because how many people eat and eat and eat and they don't get full? And how many people eat just a small bit and they get full? Right? So he drinks the water and becomes full and he enjoyed the sweetness of this water. So he asks, where did this water come from? And they reply, from the house of Hatim al-Asam. And the Amir is shocked. He said, the pious man, because he was known. And they say, yes, the pious man. And then the Amir says at this point, he says, Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought us water, not just from anybody's house. Right? Because, for example, we have in our time, we will just eat from anywhere. Right? But the best, he praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to drink water that came from the house of a pious man. So he says, the Amir says, go and call Hatim al-Asam. And they explain to him that Hatim isn't here. He left for Hajj. And they explain the story that we have nothing here, we've been starving, our provisions ran out. And the Amir looks at them and he takes off his belt. And on his belt was filled with jewels. So he takes his belt and he puts it down on the table. And then he tells all of those around him, all of those that came with him, he tells them that if all of you respect me, you will do what I just did. And they all take off their belt, which were filled with jewels, and they put it on the table. And they went to go sell these jewels, and they got a lot of money. Right? And they got a lot of money. So, after that, the home of Hatim al-Asam became known as one of the wealthiest Muslim homes in that area. So, after this, when they had the money, the rest of the siblings, except this pious girl, this young daughter of Hatim al-Asam, the rest of the siblings went and they bought him drinks and food and drinks and food, and they ate and drank and ate and drank. But that daughter, that girl, she wasn't with them. She was at home, and what was she doing? She was busy crying. And the mother looks at her, surprised, amazed, and tells her, now, yesterday when we were starving, you were laughing. Now today, when we've been given riches, Now you are crying. And she says, and there's the importance of the lesson. There are many lessons in the story, but the lesson that we want to make mention of. Because we said that most people misunderstand when we speak about this gaze that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give. This young pious girl, she says that this person, this Amir, this king is his creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So she says, this creation that gazed upon us just once, out of compassion and out of mercy, and He gave us all the riches that we would need until we die. Because then the money means nothing. And afterwards she says, so what about if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what if Ar-Razzaq, the sustainer, would gaze upon us in the same way? That's riches in this world and the next world. So this young girl, like we said, wouldn't compare to majority of the elder that we have in this time. Right? This young small girl, when her mother and her elder siblings were busy with the money, she was thinking and she was crying, I don't want the gaze of this man, I want the gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the end, because of the trust that she had, because she's the one that told her father go, and she's the one that was not fazed when her family was speaking bad about her. The trust that she had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that Hatim al-Asam, her father, had all the provision he needed. He was taken care of on his journey, and made sure that the family in the home had everything they needed, and even more. Right? But because of that, even when she had all that money, she said, what if Allah was to gaze upon us in this way? With compassion and mercy. Just once. Just once. La ilaha illallah. And then we mentioned some of the etiquettes, the adab of fasting. And we still continue speaking about the etiquettes of fasting. And the Sheikh said, من آداب الصائم ألا يكثر النوم بالنهار ولا يكثر الأكل بالليل. That from the etiquettes of fasting is to not sleep a lot in the day. Right? And we know a lot of us, we like sleeping in the day in Ramadan because the day go quick. It says from the etiquettes, the adab of fasting is to not sleep a lot in the day. ولا يكثر الأكل بالليل. And do not eat a lot, do not eat excessively at night. وليقتصد في ذلك حتى يجد مس الجوع والعطش. To the point that you feel the thirst and you feel the hunger. Right? فتتهذب نفسه وتضعف شهوته ويستنير قلبه وذلك سر الصوم ومقصوده. Why do you have to feel this thirst and this hunger? Because when you do this, then you are fighting against and correcting your nafs. And you are weakening your shahwa, you are weakening your ego. Right? You're weakening your desires when you become hungry and thirsty. And what happens also? Your heart becomes filled with nur. And like we said, when your heart becomes filled with nur, it spreads to the rest of your body. Until your body is complete nur. And when your body is nur, then everything that you do and everything that you want to do is that which brings you closer to the one that gave you that nur. وَذَلِكَ سِرُّ الصَّوْمِ وَمَقْصُودُ. And that is the secret and the goal of fasting. What? To control and correct yourself, your nafs, your desires. ولجانب الصائم الرفاهية والإكثار من تناول الشهوات واللذات كما ذكرنا. وأقل ذلك أن يكون عادته من الترفه واحدة في رمضان وغيره. She explains about being luxurious, right? Enjoying your time. When you speak about this, we talk about sleeping a lot, eating a lot, right? You sleep the whole day, then you don't feel that you're hungry when you wake up. You sleep, you make fajr, then you sleep until Maghrib. Or you make fajr, you go work, you get back from work 5 o'clock, then there's still 2 hours till Maghrib, then you go sleep for that 2 hours. You could have recited Quran, fight against your nafs, but your nafs and your desires want you to go sleep. And afterwards, you break your fast, and immediately after you break your fast, you start eating the food and you eat all the samosas and everything. But when he speaks about this now, breaking your fast, you eat the date, you drink water, maybe you eat one samosa too, then you go make maghrib first and you can eat afterwards. But you don't eat excessively to the point that your stomach is full and now at night you want to go sleep early because then you're wasting your nights in Ramadan. So he says, وَهَذَا أَقَلُّ مَا يَنْبَغِي وَإِلَّا فَلِلرِّيَاضَةِ وَمُجَانَبَةِ شَهَوَاتِ النَّفْسِ أَثَّرُ الْكَبِيرِ فِي تَنْوِيرِ الْقَلْبِ وَتُطْلَبُ بِالْخُصُوصِ فِي رَمَضَانِ. Says that exercising and also giving into your nafs and your shahwa, your desires, it has a massive effect on your heart. It has a massive effect in removing that nur from your heart if you give in to them. But if you fight them, then it has a massive effect in filling your heart with nur. And this type of jihad, because there's a jihad when some of the companions came back from a war, and Rasulullah ﷺ, he said that welcome back, you have returned from a small jihad. And they were shocked, a small jihad. We were on a battlefield fighting with swords, a small jihad. They asked Rasulullah, what is the greater jihad? And Rasulullah ﷺ said, jihadun nafs, the battle against your nafs. Right? So he says this is especially requested or sought in Ramadan. Right? You're supposed to do it throughout your life, but especially in Ramadan, because of how easy it is to fight against your nafs in Ramadan. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ يَجْعَلُونَ لَهُمْ فِي رَمَضَانِ عَادَاتٍ مِنَ التَّرَفُّهَاتِ وَالشَّهَوَاتِ الَّتِي لَا يَتَعَادُونَها فِي غَيْرِ رَمَضَانِ فَغُرُورٌ غَرَّهُمْ بِالشَّيْطَانِ حَسَدًا مِنْهُ لَهُمْ حَتَّى لَا يَجِدُوا بَرَكَاتِ صَوْمِهِمْ. Says that all those who have become accustomed to having a luxurious Ramadan, we say, you enjoyed your Ramadan, you had no difficulty in the sense of you were not hungry, you were not thirsty, you sleep the whole day, you wake up, you eat, and you go sleep again after Isha. Right? You gave into your desires and you made it something that you do every day. You were consistent. Says this is a deception from shaitan. Because shaitan is so envious. Because he's so envious of you that he does not want you to gain the blessings, the barakah of Ramadan, so he does this. He whispers in your ear. Right? And when does he whisper? Because shaitan is locked up in Ramadan. When does he whisper? Now. In Rajab, in Sha'ban. Says, don't worry, enjoy your time. Say, now Ramadan, I'm going to wake up, make fajr, I'm going to go sleep. And I'm going to wake up maghrib time. I'm going to make fajr, go sleep, then wake up for work, come home, go sleep again. Then eat, make maghrib. Then eat, what? Then eat supper. Then make isha. Then you go sleep again. Then you waste your time. Right? Say, make a plan now. But if you take advantage of these times, Rajab and Sha'ban, we are now in the month of Sha'ban, when Rasulullah ﷺ said that many people are negligent of this month. And we ask Allah to make us of those who are not negligent of this month. Right? In Sha'ban, we are now 5 days in. No. Yes. 5 days in. Right? We ask ourselves, what have we done for these 5 days of Ramadan? Right? If we want to take advantage and do our best and excel in Ramadan, you have to start in Sha'ban. If we missed out in Rajab, then we do it in Sha'ban. So he says that shaitan doesn't want you to gain the blessings of Ramadan, or the blessings of your fasting. He doesn't want you to be forgiven. He doesn't want you to get the rewards of fasting. وَلَا تَظْهَرَ عَلَيْهِمْ آثَارُ مِنَ الْأَنْوَارِ وَالْمُكَاشِفَاتِ. And he doesn't want these effects of nur to be given to you, to be sprinkled upon you. He doesn't want you to have nur. And he doesn't want you to have these spiritual unveilings. Right? والخشوع لله تعالى والانكسار بين يديه والتلذذ بمناجاته وتلاوة كتابه وذكره. And he doesn't want you to be focused with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He doesn't want you to be broken for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't want your heart to be broken for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when your heart is broken for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we mentioned last week, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنَا عِنْدَ الْمُنْكَسِرَةِ الْقُلُوبُ مِنْ أَجَلِي. I am with those whose hearts are broken for my sake. So that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close to you, but shaitan doesn't want it. But if Allah is close to you, then He can't get to you. Also, وَالتَّلَذُّذْ بِمُنَاجَاتِ. Say that in Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls out, يَا بَاغِي الْخَيْرِ أَقْبِلْ وَيَا بَاغِي شَرْ أَقْصِرْ. That all those who seek good come closer. Right? وَتِلَاوَةْ كِتَابُ. And recitation of the Quran. Ramadan come, then first you sleep a lot, and you also don't recite the Quran. Then where's all the blessings? You sleep so much that you don't always feel that you're hungry. You don't always feel that you're thirsty. You miss all the main points of fasting, and you lose out on all the blessings. وَكَانَ عَادَةُ السَّلَفِ. And from the customs of the Salaf, rahmatullah alayhim, التقليل من العادات والشهوات. That they used to, the customs that they had, they used to do less of that in Ramadan, or in general. And they used to not follow their desires. Say for example, tonight, I want chicken samosas. Say for example, you want chicken samosas. The Salaf, they would, just because they desire the chicken samosas, they would not make it that night, to fight against their desires. وَالْإِسْتِكْثَارِ مِنَ الْأَعْمَالِ الصَّالِحَاتِ فِي رَمَضَانِ بِالْخُصُوصِ. And especially in Ramadan, they would increase in doing good. You do good, mashallah, do more in Ramadan, because you get more reward. وَإِنْ كَانَ ذَلِكَ مَعْرُوفًا مِنْ سَيْدِهِمْ فِي جَمِيعِ الْأَوْقَاتِ. Even though they did good throughout their lives, in Ramadan you do more. Even if your whole day is filled with doing good and serving people, in Ramadan you do more. وَمِنْ آدَابِهِ. And also from the etiquettes is أَنْ لَا يُكْثِرَ التَّشَاغُلْ بِأُمُورِ الدُّنْيَا فِي شَهْرِ رَمَضَانِ. Do not busy yourself with this world in the month of Ramadan. Right? Except أو بل يتفرغ عنها لعبادة الله وذكره ما أمكنه ولا يدخل في شيء من أشغال الدنيا إلا إن كان ضروريا في حقه أو في حق من يلزم القيام به من العيال ونحوهم. You don't busy yourself with this dunya except if you need to. Right? What do we mean? You need to work so you can have money to sustain your family. That's fine. But anything else, after work you want to take an extra dive to your friend, then you just want to go play drums, then you come home Maghrib time, you want to play dominoes and you come home Maghrib time. Right? When you could have went home after work, you recite Quran till Maghrib. Right? Don't busy yourself with anything else from this dunya, but free yourself so that you can do more ibadah. You read more Quran, you make more salah. Right? Many of us have qadha. When we were younger, we didn't make salah. Right? Use Ramadan to fulfill that qadha. Even though you're supposed to be fulfilling it, now in Ramadan you make more salah, so you can fulfill that salah that you never made when you were younger. Except that which you need, your work. Right? That is not part of this. If you're busy with your work, that still counts as ibadah because it's part of your provisions for your family. وذلك لأن شهر رمضان في الشهور بمنزلة يوم الجمعة في الأيام فينبغي للمؤمن أن يجعل يوم جمعته وشهره هذا لآخرته خصوصا. Because the month of Ramadan is like the day of Jumu'ah. And the actions that we do in the month of Ramadan and the day of Jumu'ah should only be for our akhirah. It shouldn't be for this world. Right? وَمِنَ السُنَّةِ. And from the sunnahs of fasting is تَعْجِيلُ الْفُطُورِ. Sometimes we don't, if we're driving in traffic, then we don't have anything with us. From the sunnahs is that as soon as you hear the adhan, or as soon as it's Maghrib time, right? then you break your fast. For example, somebody that studied fiqh and they're sitting on the beach and they see that the sun has set, but they didn't hear the adhan yet. It's Maghrib time because the sun set, right? Maybe the adhan is a bit late, but as soon as he realizes that it's Maghrib time, you break your fast immediately. You don't delay. From the sunnah is to, as soon as you realize it's Maghrib, you break your fast. وَيَكُنْ عَلَى التَّمْرِ. And from the sunnah is to break your fast with a date, right? فَإِن لَمْ يَجِدُوا فَعَلَى الْمَاءِ. And if you can't find a date, then you break your fast with water. وكان عليه الصلاة والسلام يفطر قبل أن يصلي المغرب ويقول لا تزال أمتي بخير ما عجل الفطور وأخر السحور فتأخير السحور من السنة أيضا. That Rasulullah ﷺ used to break his fast, right? With a date, and he used to break his fast, not still eat or break his fast and go make Maghrib. And then he said sallallahu alayhi wasallam that my ummah will always be in a state of good as long as they break their fast immediately when it's Maghrib time and they delay their suhoor. What do you mean delay suhoor? At first you wake up an hour, sometimes 2 hours before Fajr and you eat the whole time. The whole 2 hours because you don't want to be hungry. So you eat. Ta'khir al-suhoor is part of the sunnah. Delaying your suhoor till when it's close to Fajr is sunnah. Right? وَيَنْبَغِي لِلصَّائِمِ أَن يُقَلِّلْ مِنَ الْأَكْلِ وَلَا يَسْتَكْثِرْ مِنْهُ. It's important for the person that's fasting, whether it's suhoor or iftar, that you eat a little. Don't eat a lot. وَذَلِكَ حَتَّى يَظْهَرْ عَلَيْهِ أَثَرُ الصَّوْمِ. We say suhoor, you don't eat a lot because so that the effects of fasting can be shown upon you. Somebody looks at you, they can see this person is fasting. They can see, here we're speaking about Zahiran, from the outer aspect, they can see that this person is thirsty, they can see this person is hungry. Right? وَيَحْضَى بِسِرِّهِ وَمَقْصُودِهِ الَّذِي هُوَ تَأْدِيبُ النَّفْسِ وَتَضْعِيفُ الشَّهَوَاتِهَا فَإِنَّ لِلْجُوعِ وَخُلُوِّ الْمَعْدَةِ أَثَرًا عَظِيمًا فِي تَنْوِيرِ الْقَلْبِ. And you reach this goal of what? Of training your nafs and of weakening your desires. Because hunger and an empty stomach has a massive impact on filling your heart with nur. Right? Hungry. Why? Also, وَنَشَاطُ الْجَوَارِحِ فِي الْعِبَادَةِ. When you're hungry, and most people don't understand when I'm full, when I eat. But when you're hungry, you have more energy to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when you're full, you say, no, I go sleep. Then you don't, then you're tired again. وَالشَّبْعُ أَصْلُ الْقَسْوَةِ وَالْغَفْلَةِ. And a full stomach is the origin of having a hard heart. And a hard heart is a heart that is very far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is very distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a full stomach is also a reason of negligence. وَالْكَسَلْ عَنِ الطَّاعَةِ. And being lazy to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام ما ملأ ابن آدم وعاء شر من بطن حسب ابن آدم لقيمات يقمن صلبا فإن كان لا محالة فثلث لطعامي وثلث لشرابي وثلث لنفسي. At Rasulullah ﷺ, he said that there is no vessel that the son of Adam, there is no vessel that is more evil when it is filled, except what? Your stomach. Right? And he says that 2 morsels of food, he says 2 morsels of food is enough to keep your back straight, meaning it's enough to give you energy to fulfill your day. 2 morsels of food. And he says, he explains to you how to eat. He says, فَثُلُثٌ لِطَعَامِ. A third of your stomach for your food. وَثُلُثٌ لِشَرَابِ. A third for your drink. وَثُلُثٌ لِنَفَسِ. And you leave a third for your breath, to breathe. Because if you eat too much, then you find you struggle to breathe. Right? You breathe heavier if you fill your stomach completely. وَقَالَ بَعْضُهُمْ. And some of the Salihin, they say, إذا شبعت البطن جاعت جميع الجوارح وإذا جاعت البطن شبعت جميع الجوارح. That if you fill your stomach, then the rest of your body parts become hungry. But if you do not fill your stomach, if you are hungry, your stomach, right? Then the rest of your body parts are full. How do you understand this? You can explain it now. He said, قلت وجوع الجوارح عبارة عن طلبها وحرصها على شهواتها. That when you say that your body parts are hungry, right? It's a phrase explaining that these body parts, they're hungry, so they're seeking to fulfill your desires. Or when they're hungry, they are following your desires. فَيَشْتَهِ اللِّسَانُ الْكَلَامِ. And we say the tongue is hungry, the tongue wants to talk. وَالْعَيْنُ النَّظَرِ. And the eyes always want to look everywhere. Right? وَالْأُذُنُ الْإِسْتِمَاعِ. The ears, they want to listen to everything, even if that has nothing to do with them. They just want to listen. وَكَذَلِكَ سَائِرُ الْجَوَارِحِ. And the rest of the body is the same. That's if your stomach is full. But if you don't fill your stomach, and your body parts will be full. Why? Because now you're fighting against your desires. ويكون انبعاثها لطلب الفضول من شهواتها عند امتلاء البطن. And when your stomach is full, right, you find that you will give in to your desires more easily, right? وعند خلو يكون سكونها وهدوءها المعبر به عن شبع الجوارح. And we said that when he said there that if your stomach is empty, then your body parts are full. That you will find when your stomach is empty, and then your desires are weak, so they can't, right? They can't take control over you that much. So you find that you are more calm, more passive, and you have more control over yourself. وذلك مشاهد والله أعلم. ومن المستحب المتأكد تفطير الصائم ولو على تمرات. From that which is recommended is that you break your fast, even if it's on 2 dates, or if it's on with multiple dates. أو شرب من الماء, or drinking water. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام من فطر صائما. Oh, from what is recommended, is to feed somebody that's fasting, whether it's with dates or with a cup of water. Because Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Man fattara sa'iman, كان له مثل أجره من غير أن ينقص من أجره شيء." That whoever feeds somebody that is fasting, he gets the reward of that fasting person without removing from his reward. Right? So you fasting, and then somebody comes, then you have somebody that's fasting. Maybe a poor person that's fasting. You go and you give him a day to break his fast, or a few days to break his fast. You give him food to break his fast. You have your reward of fasting and his reward, fasting times 2. Now imagine you go feed 5 people, fasting, the reward of fasting times 5. Imagine you go out and you decide that for the whole community of Ramadan, you're going to fast them. You're gonna have a massive iftar. You're going to invite everybody, and you get the reward of fasting for each and every one of them. They get the reward for fasting, and you get that same reward. يعني من أجل الصائم وهذا الثواب إنما يحصل لمن فطره ولو على الماء. Even if you give him a fasting person, you give him water. He's fasting, you want to break his fast, give him water. You get the reward of his fast without removing from his fast, but you get the same reward. فأما من أطعم الصائم من بعد فطره في بيته أو في موضع آخر فليس يحصل له هذا الثواب ولكن يحصل له ثواب الإطعام وهو عظيم وثواب من أشبع الصائم مهما أطعمه حتى يشبعه وهو كثير. That's if you give the person the state to break his fast. But now what if you feed somebody after he broke his fast? After Maghrib, you made Maghrib, now invite him to your house, come have supper by me. You don't get the reward of his fast, but you still get a great reward for feeding the person, right? But you don't get the same reward as giving somebody that date that he broke his fast with. Right? There he says, وَصَلَاةُ التَّرَاوِيحِ. The line goes off at 8:15. 2 minutes past 8. صلاة التراويح في كل ليلة من رمضان سنة مأثورة. Right? That صلاة التراويح every night of Ramadan, it's a sunnah because Rasulullah ﷺ used to make tarawih, but used to make it alone at home because he didn't want to make it difficult upon the rest of the Muslims, so he made it alone at home. Then Sayyidina Uthman, he came and he decided to gather everybody. He decided to gather everybody in the masjid and recite tarawih like that. Right? And we still continue to do it till today's time. So he says that وعادة السلف رحمة الله عليهم توزيع القرآن من أوله إلى آخره عليها يقرؤون منها في كل ليلة ما تيسر ويجعلون الختم في بعض الليالي من آخر الشهر. So that from what those before us they used to do, they give out parts of the Quran, ajza, or depending how you're going to recite, sides, generally for the huffaz. Right? Like here they do for the huffaz. If you find some other countries, then some of them that stand in front, they wouldn't be huffaz, but they know how to recite Quran with tajweed. Right? Because for tarawih, because the sunnah salah, you can stand with or you can use your phone and you can read. Because it's a sunnah salah. So he says, so they would do this, and they would do it as much as they can in the night, in the 20 rak'ahs, right? Of Tarawih. And then in the last few nights, they would do khatams. They would do a whole Quran, khatam. Everybody knows what the khatam is, right? Like for example, in Ramadan, we would finish, in Tarim, we would finish in the half of the month, and at the end of the month, we do another khatam. Right? So 2. And some masajid are like that. They do a khatam in Tarawih, they do one outside of Tarawih, maybe they do 2 in Tarawih. Why? فَمَنْ أَمْكَنَ أَن يَقْتَدِي بِهِمْ فِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيُمَشِّرْ وَلَا يُقَصِّرْ فَإِنَّ الْخَيْرَ غَنِيمَةٌ. So if you are able to do this in your masajid, then do it. Do your best to not just give it out, but do your best to be at the masjid every night when they recite the Quran so you can get the reward from the beginning till the end. Because this good is what? He says ghanima. It's like a treasure. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّن خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Whatever you put forward of good, you will find it where? With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? No good that you did, or no good that you will do, or no good that you are doing now, goes unseen from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes that good and He keeps it with Him, and He gives it to you on that day when you need it the most. On the day of Qiyamah, when you need all the rewards that you need, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you all the good that you did. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتَّفِقْ لَهُ الْإِقْتِدَاء بِهِمْ فِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَحْذِرْ مِنَ التَّخْفِيفِ المفرط الذي يعتاد كثير من الجهل في صلاتهم للتراويح. And if you're not able to do this, then beware of extremely shortening your salah to the point, or firstly extremely shortening your salah to the point where you fall into mistakes that nullify your salah, which lots of ignorant people do. Right? You know that in Ramadan, then lots of people make salah, they go up, down, kiss the ground. Right? They forget the arkan of salah. Because we have something called tuma'nina, right? After the ruku, between the ruku and the sujood. Right? Which is a pause that you have for the length of subhanallah. You make a ruku, you don't come up and go immediately. Make a ruku, you come up, you stand for the length of subhanallah, then you go down. And you come back from sujood for the length of subhanallah, then you go down again for the next sujood. But by some masajid, they start Isha, say for example, Isha is 9 o'clock, and they finish 20 past 9 with the whole juice. Because they go up, down, kiss the ground. حتى ربما يقعون بسبب في الإخلال بشيء من الواجبات. That's what we said. Method 1. وترك قراءة الفاتحة على الوجه الذي لا بد منه بسبب العجلة. العجلة, because sometimes you recite Surah Fatiha so fast that you forget the tashdeedat. You recite Surah Fatiha so fast that you make a mistake. Right? And if you miss one of the tashdeedat in Surah Fatiha, then your salah is batil. Right? Because Surah Fatiha in the Shafi'i madhab is compulsory. In the Hanafi madhab, the Imam reciting Surah Fatiha is enough. But in the Shafi'i madhab, everybody needs to recite Surah Fatiha. Right? Because in the Shafi'i madhab, your salah is not dependent on the Imam. Your salah is dependent on yourself. Right? So if you don't recite the Fatiha, it's not enough. If you don't recite the Fatiha, your salah is invalid. فيصير أحدهم عند الله تعالى له وصلى ففاز بالثواب وله وترك فاعترف بالتقصير وسلم من الإعجاب. That you will become of those, or that group of people that make that fast salah up, down, kiss the ground, you become of those that you didn't in reality make salah and you missed out the reward of that salah, and also you didn't stop and realize that you're making a mistake, or save yourself from the amazement. Because some people, they think, I'm quiet, I stood in front, everybody made 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 2 rakats. I made 5 minutes, 2 rakats. I'm quiet, I know my Quran because I did fast. Right? But then you make so much mistakes because you did fast. وهذه وما أشبهها من أعظم مكايد الشيطان أهل الإيمان. That this is from the greatest plans of shaitan for those who have iman. Why? يبطل على العامل منهم عمله مع فعله للعمل فاحذروا من ذلك وانتبهوا له معاشر الإخوان. That this is one of shaitan's greatest plans, one of his best plans, that he makes you do wrong with a good action. And we made this example many times in Aqidah class, that shaitan will come to you and it's Ramadan, right? He tells you, no, recite Quran and make tahajjud all night. In 5 minutes before Fajr, shaitan tell you, see, you're tired now, go sleep, take a nap. You're going to wake up for Fajr. But you're going to sleep 5 minutes before Fajr, or you're going to wake up for Fajr. You're not going to wake up for Fajr. So now you listen, I'm going to go listen, I'm going to take a nap for Fajr. And then, what happened? You wake up and it's the world time. Now yes, you made tahajjud, you recited the Quran, you did this, you did that, but you didn't make Fajr. Tahajjud is sunnah, right? Reciting the Quran, not as compulsory as making salah. Right? You stood the whole night making sunnah salah, but you don't make the compulsory salah. Doesn't make sense. That's how shaitan gets you. Because you don't get punished for not making the sunnah salah, but you get punished for not making fajr. So he says that's one of the greatest plans of shaitan, is that he comes to you through good actions. Right? Through good actions. And then we'll end off there. And inshallah, there's 2 more classes. We should finish it, this chapter. Then he continues speaking about Taraweeh, and then he speaks about doing good. And then after that, he'll speak about the importance of the last 10 days of Ramadan. Right? Because now we emphasize the importance of the first night. From understanding the story of that young girl, the daughter of Hatim al-Asam, right? And how she understood the gaze that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give. We have to have that understanding, not on the first night, but from now. And start working to get that gaze, not the night before Ramadan, but from now. So that it becomes easier for you on that night to gain the gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on that night, we find ourselves not sleeping at home, but enlivening the night. Right? In Sayyidina Ali, there were certain nights that he used to bring to life. In Tahrim, we used to, certain nights that you don't sleep. Certain nights that you come, then you sit in the masjid, you sit in a circle, you recite Quran. Whole night. Right? Then they would bring like things and stuff because you become hungry, but the whole night you recite Quran. The first night of Ramadan is that night. Shaitan is going to try his best now, before he becomes locked up, he's going to try his best to put thoughts in your mind. It's like that thought. He's telling you now already that my plan is now after Taraweeh, I'm going to make another 50 rak'ats. And I'm going to recite another 5 juz of Quran. But I'm going to take a nap, just a small nap, 5 minutes before Fajr. He's whispering in your ears now already. He was whispering in your ears now already to make plans on that first night so that you are busy, so that you don't gain that gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that first night. But again, if you look at the example of that girl, the daughter of Hazrat Nasam, you understand that comparing the jewels that they had, that was nothing to her compared to the gaze that she desired from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the understanding. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us in Sha'ban, and to bless us in the beginning of Ramadan, and to allow us to reach Ramadan, and to aid us in everything that we do in Ramadan, and to make us of those who gain the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Ramadan. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.